what the court is saying and what President Lungu's lawyers were saying in question 1 are two different things.
The PF, you don't have a candidate. It's high time you sit down and start looking around amongst yourselves who can take over from President Edgar Lungu. President Edgar Lungu knows that he's not eligible. And you guys around President Edgar Lungu, you know he's not eligible. Chris Zumanzimba, you know he's not eligible. Lukangaba, you know President Edgar Lungu is not eligible. You know that.
The constitution that we're discussing right now is the 1996 constitution. Now, what was the spirit in that constitution? From 1991 to 1996, what did the MMD want to do? Having been ruled under a one-party participatory democracy for 27 years under the KK regime, the first thing we wanted to do was to change that no political president was going to rule beyond 2 terms. Let's be very clear. That was the reasoning with that constitution which came into play. Now, the 1996 constitution was merely amended in 2016. I want that as a premise.
Said, the court answered only the first question, but even then,
and they answered the first question. What was the response?
I'll read it.
Okay.
For the benefit of your listeners. At page 51 of the judgment, this is what the Constitutional Court is saying. Before we proceed to consider the question posed above, we note that although the applicants argued in their submission that this matter has been brought pursuant to Article 128(1)(a), which gives this court jurisdiction to interpret constitutional provisions, the manner the above question has been couched personalizes the issue in that it targets the incumbent president as an individual. Okay? This is what the Constitutional Court is saying. They go on. We do not encourage this trend. They disagreed. They're basically saying, listen, don't come to us and talk to us about a person. We're not interested in the person. We're interested in the law. We don't want to talk about Edgar Lungu. This is what the Constitutional Court is saying. We do not encourage this trend because the framing of the questions for this court's interpretation of constitutional provision should not target any individual as it is meant for the general application, as the interpretation is binding on every person in the Republic. What we are dealing with in the present case is the office of president. We of course understand that what the question is, or what it ought to have been, and what it aims at, namely the office of president. The question, therefore, ought to have been framed as follows. You understand? The court rejected the way the question was framed,
and they reframed it.
And they reframed it. They said, whether in terms of Article 106(3) and 6, a presidential term of office that ran from
the
25th of January to 13th September and straddled 2 constitutional regimes can or should be considered as a full term. Let me pause there.
Which was my question earlier on.
Let me pause there.
Yeah.
This is a problem.
Yeah.
Okay? This is a court misbehaving. Okay? The court has no power to change the question that has been presented to it. Okay? Because the court must be independent and impartial. You decide the case in the manner I have framed it. Okay? Now, what the court is saying and what President Lungu's lawyers were saying in question 1 are two different things. Okay? Nobody has ever argued that the period between 25th January 2015 to September 2016 constitutes a full term. Okay? Nobody has ever argued that. You know it's only 20 months, so how can it be a full term? This has never been a contested issue. Okay? So you have a critical question that has been posed, but it has been reframed by the court, wrongly so. Okay? So now, these are issues that need careful consideration. The question is, does the court have the power to change my case? No, the court has no power to change my case. Lungu's lawyers are saying something else, the court is saying something else. Now, having said that, nothing stops the court from saying, gentlemen, you the lawyers from both parties, come before us. We have looked at your question. We don't think at all your question makes sense. We would like this question reframed, right? The lawyer for the other side is there, the other side is there. We believe as a court, this question ought to read like this. Then the court should now invite the parties to address them on the new question as framed. Neither Lungu's lawyers, now those on the other side, ever addressed the Constitutional Court on this issue.
On the reframed question.
On the reframed issue.
Okay.
This was something that the court concocted on its own, which was wrong. They should not have done that. And if they had, what they should have done is to invite the parties back to say, guys, we have looked at the case, we have looked at this thing. In the process of us writing our judgment, we believe that the way you framed it is wrong. We think the real issue should be this. Can you address that on that?
In your entire time in court as a lawyer, no court has ever reframed your question without a consultation.
Never.
Okay.
Never. That's lawlessness.
Okay.
Complete lawlessness. Because the problem I'll have is, why are you changing somebody's question? Then I'm going to accuse you of bias. That's judicial bias. You have no right. Okay? Now, the person, that is why the court needs to invite both parties to say, guys, this is how we think the question ought to be. Then the other party may say, no, my lord, I insist my question should be the way it is framed. Or he can say, I agree. And the other party will say, no, my lord, you cannot frame it this way. We'll go back and forth until we agree on a common question. To say, this is the issue we're now inviting the court to adjudicate on. Now, this never happened in this case. Neither President Lungu's lawyers ever addressed it. This was not their question. If you read this question and the other question, are two different questions altogether. This is not a contested issue. It can't be an issue. Nobody has ever said whether the period served here is 2 terms. No, or qualifies as a full term. No. But in any case, there is no full term in sub-article 3. Or what article 1, sub-article 3 is saying you have held office for twice. That's all. So where is the full term coming from? Okay? This was a redundant exercise. Okay? This is question 1. What did the court do on the question 2, which is the most important question, which was posed, whether President Lungu was eligible to stand in 2021? This is what the Constitutional Court said. At page 83 of the judgment, it says, as regards the second question posed in the amended originating summons, which is whether the incumbent president is eligible for election as president in 2021 presidential election, our view is that in the light of the position we have taken as regards the first question posed in the amended originating summons, the second question has become odious and we shall not consider it. That's what the Constitution Court said. So where did they say that he's eligible? Because the court refused to consider that particular question. Okay? So the Constitutional Court has never declared that President Lungu is eligible to stand for 2021. They declined because they said this does not amount to interpretation of the Constitution. We cannot begin to deal with individuals. We deal with the interpretation of the law. Since we have taken the view that we should be interpreting the law and not dealing with the individual, we will not consider the second question.
Even though they reframed the question. Because isn't that the reason why they reframed the question?
They reframed
the question because they were concerned that you were dealing with individuals.
That's right.
Yeah.
But this was even more pronounced. The second question, they refused. Okay? Bottom line is that the second question was never considered. Okay? It's very clear to say the second question has become irrelevant and we shall not consider it. You get the point? So when the court says we will not consider it because it is irrelevant, that doesn't mean that we're endorsing your position that one is eligible to contest.
Can I take you back to what the first question was?
Yes.
Because it says, I'm just reading it as it is, regards the second question posed, whether or not the incumbent president is eligible for election as president. Our view is that in light of the position we've taken as regards the first question posed.
Yes.
What was the response to the first question that was posed? Does that help in understanding why the second question?
No, it doesn't help.
Okay.
Because they are saying, they concluded that the period.
The constitution that we're discussing right now is the 1996 constitution. Now, what was the spirit in that constitution? From 1991 to 1996, what did the MMD want to do? Having been ruled under a one-party participatory democracy for 27 years under the KK regime, the first thing we wanted to do was to change that no political president was going to rule beyond 2 terms. Let's be very clear. That was the reasoning with that constitution which came into play. Now, the 1996 constitution was merely amended in 2016. I want that as a premise so that people understand. So the spirit of the letter of the law is that no president was to exceed 2 terms. We have to make that very clear. Under the 1996 constitution, there was Article 35. Article 35 simply said a person who has been elected twice to office shall not be eligible. It's in mandatory terms. Shall not be eligible to stand again. That means the 2 terms must be respected. However, we must be very clear. A president is given by the constitution 2 terms to stand of 5 years each. But it's not mandatory that he must serve those 5 years. Let me go deeper so that the common man now can understand. Let's go back to 2006. Under the 1996 constitution, one Levi Patrick Mwanawasa, State Council, the late, is elected for the 2nd time into office. He was initially elected in 2001. Now he's elected for the 2nd time in 2006 to hold office as president. Unfortunately, he dies. Therefore, in 2008, the Zambian people are forced to go for a presidential by-election in 2008 to elect what? A president. But which parliament is in session here? Please follow me. The lifespan of a president is tied to the lifespan of parliament. He doesn't exist on his own. No. Parliament in 2006 was not dissolved. But the constitution said if the president dies, within 90 days there must be a by-election. That is how come Bwezani, Rupia Bwezani Banda, became our president in 2008 after the death of Mwanawasa. Parliament was still there. It was not dissolved. The lifespan of parliament was running. The president therefore had to run. By 2011, His Excellency the President, Rupia Bwezani Banda, was compelled to dissolve parliament, which was his parliament now. It means that for all arguments, the president cannot exist without National Assembly. When he attends it, it becomes parliament. His term is tied to that of parliament. This is a very important part which I think we have missed here. That is why when he dissolved parliament, technically he dissolved himself. But the law allows him to remain in office during the election period because there should be no vacancy. It says he must hand over to the next president-elect. 2011, President Sata wins the elections. But 2014, President Sata dies with his parliament in session, elected in 2011. Parliament of 2011 is not dissolved. The presidency has a vacancy because the constitution has got the 90 days within which to run a by-election. So we go for a by-election for the presidency. Unfortunately for the Patriotic Front at that time, it suffered two problems. They had no presidential candidate. So in 2014, the PF had to go to a convention. The constitution of the PF reads, the person who is elected at the convention becomes automatically the presidential candidate in the general election to run, or in the the presidential by-election to run. His Excellency Edgar Chagwa Lungu was elected as president of PF in 2014 at a convention. On the 20th of January 2015, he was elected to office for the first time, and he found a parliament from 2011 running. His term is tied to this parliament of 2011. This parliament of 2011 was going to be dissolved in 2016. So by law, he was mandated to dissolve that parliament. Just like Rupiah Banda, dissolving this parliament in 2016, technically he dissolved himself. It means elections had to be held. 11th of August 2016, His Excellency the President, Edgar Chagwa Lungu, gets elected for the second time with a new parliament, whose life now they begin together. But he has already been elected again in 2015. So he's being elected in 2016 is the second time. Let me just go a bit deeper here. You cannot argue that the president did not hold office, as I've heard some people arguing that the president did not hold office. Let's be serious. The Constitution is a practical document. It speaks life into a nation. We must be very clear. In the current Constitution, Article 105 clearly states, as it did before, how does a president assume office? One, he gets elected, then he is sworn in by the Chief Justice or the Deputy Chief Justice, as the case may be, and then he assumes office. Did that happen for Edgar Chagwa Lungu in 2015?
Twice.
Yes. Did it happen for Edgar Chagwa Lungu in August 2016? Yes. Twice. So he cannot say he has not been elected twice. He has. Therefore, he is caught by Article 106 subclause 3, twice elected. He cannot run again. Let's be very clear. Now, people have been saying no, but the Constitutional Court said, and no. The life of the presidency as an institution has always been attached to the life of Parliament. That is why when Parliament is dissolved, the president cannot stay in office. Parliament has got power to prolong its life, but in special circumstances. For instance, if there's a war, Parliament can prolong its life for 12 months. They can remain in office and say, no, we're fighting a war. If we go to elections now, there'll be problems. Let's maintain this. But that's not an election. We're talking about being elected. Once you're elected twice, that's it. You're done.
All right. So
I understand somehow this insecurity. This insecurity is arising from the fact that President Edgar Lungu knows that he's not eligible. And you guys around President Edgar Lungu, you know he's not eligible. Chris Zumanzimba, you know he's not eligible. Lukangaba, you know President Edgar Lungu is not eligible. You know that. You know. You know. You know. That is all I'm saying. You know that he's not eligible. President Edgar Lungu is not eligible. And you know, these things, what makes me, I know some people will say, why are you talking about this? All along you have been saying, Edgar Lungu is eligible and everything. Trust me, I asked myself a moral question. I said, okay, you know, some people came to see me and really went through the constitution and so on and so forth and whatever. And at the end of the day, I asked myself a moral question. Okay, if President Edgar Lungu doesn't qualify because he finished a term, Yawa Sata, what moral evil am I doing? I didn't find anything. And I said, well, it's okay. I'll go with it. I'll support him if he's a good leader. Because really for me, if a person is a good leader, the constitution a constitution is made for people. Okay? But from what is going on, I am very worried. I am very worried that President Edgar Lungu should continue. I am very worried. I'm sorry. I am worried now. I am not saying don't vote for Edgar Lungu. If President Edgar Lungu will be on the ballot, so be it. That is not my fight now. That is not my fight. President Edgar Lungu's whatever is not my fight. But I'm only expressing myself. And I'm telling you that I knew this after some people went through a number of provisions with me. They went through a number of provisions with me. And I am convinced that President Edgar Lungu is not eligible. But I ask myself a moral question to say, if he's a good leader, why shouldn't he continue? But with what is happening, with what I've even myself gone through, I am worried. The desperation is too much. President Edgar Lungu, when he became a leader, he was a humble man. And that's why God chose him. That's why God chose him. But he has tasted power, and power has become so sweet. Power has become so sweet. And he's now obsessed with power. And he wants to keep it at all costs. Even when he knows that he's not eligible. Now, some people will be wondering to say, what do I mean? It's a pity I don't have my laptop, but he sent the laptop. So I don't have the constitution. I would have read the constitution. But when you go back in the old constitution, President Edgar Lungu was elected in the old constitution. Okay? President Edgar Lungu, the first term, he did it in the old constitution. A lot of you have been arguing about a term in relation to the new constitution. That is a mistake. That is a mistake. If you want to talk about President Edgar Lungu's first term, you need to look into the old constitution. What does the old constitution say? You don't have to bring in the new constitution. And you have been lying. We have been peddling, including myself, we have been peddling this propaganda that no, the CONCORT has ruled, the CONCORT has ruled. The CONCORT has not ruled on President Edgar Lungu's eligibility. President Edgar Lungu's eligibility. What they have been talking about, they have been interpreting what a term means according to the new constitution. But when you talk about President Edgar Lungu's first term, first, you need to suspend the new constitution. You need to suspend the new constitution. You don't have to talk about the new constitution first of all. The mistake that a lot of people have been making, they have been talking about the eligibility of President Edgar Lungu according to the new constitution. Forget the new constitution. First talk about the old constitution, because President Edgar Lungu was elected in the old constitution. So the provisions and the interpretation of the term must be looked according to the old constitution. That's where you need to look, not the new constitution. The old constitution, what did the old constitution say in terms of the term? The old constitution said, once you are elected, whether you have been elected for 2 days, for 3 days, that's it. That's it. There is no interpretation of the term and so on. There is no interpretation, nothing. The moment you are sworn in, that's it. Takwali, old constitution, takwali, if you are about your 3 years, nation, takwali. The only time that you talk about how long you have been there, it is when you are talking about benefits. But in terms of being sworn in, you could be a president for a day, just for a day. You could be a president just for a day. And it counted as a term in the old constitution. It counted a term in the old constitution. And President Edgar Lungu, in 2016, when he entered into State House, what was there was the old constitution. So the moment President Edgar Lungu entered into State House, it counted as a term, full stop. You don't have to start talking, oh, how long was he there? No, nothing. The moment he entered, that is it. Whether that was good or bad, that is another matter. If that was good or bad, that is another matter. Or in other words, that is what was resolved in the new constitution. It was resolved in the new constitution, where now we brought in the vice president and we brought in the issue of, 3 years to define a term. But in the old constitution, where President Edgar Lungu came in, there was nothing like that. There was no definition. So the moment President Edgar Lungu entered the State House, it counted. It was a full term. When he brought in the new constitution, when he signed that new constitution, it did not apply to him when he entered State House for the first time. It applied to him for the second time, after 2016. That's when it applied to him. I can give you an example which somebody gave me. He said, suppose you marry a girl who is 18 years old, because the constitution allows. Today I marry somebody who is 18 years old, and the constitution allows it. No problem. Then 2 days later, the constitution has changes that no, you can't marry a girl who is 18 years old. You can only marry a girl who is 21 years old. Can the law enforcers come and arrest me? Can they do that? Can they do that? That no, you have got an 18-year-old girl. The constitution number 9 change. So you are going to be arrested when I'm already married. It can't happen. It can't happen. These things I'm saying, President Edgar Lungu knows, Chris Zumanzimba knows, Lukangava knows, and a number of PF senior government officials, they know this. But they are scared to confront President Edgar Lungu, because if they do that, then they are in problems. Then they will go to jail. President Edgar Lungu knows this. He knows. Bakateka, you came in the old constitution, and the old constitution does not talk about, 18 months, 13 months. It doesn't talk about. It just says the moment you enter State House, chapwa. So, John Sangwa is on firm ground when he says he's going to petition President Edgar Lungu. The moment he files in, he's on firm ground. And if indeed the judiciary will be fair, if indeed the judiciary will be fair and courageous, not like some of these senior government officials who are scared, they will declare President Edgar Lungu illegible. Ineligible. What is it? Ineligible. Not eligible. They will declare him not eligible because what applies to him, it's the old constitution. Don't bring in the new constitution. If anything, we can even accuse President Edgar Lungu that he brought in the new constitution so that he can prolong his stay in office. But I don't want to go there. I believe he genuinely did that. But unfortunately, he cannot benefit out of that. What applies to President Edgar Lungu? Share this. Cut this spit. What applies to President Edgar Lungu? It's the old constitution, not the new constitution. If you want to understand, to understand whether President Edgar Lungu is eligible, look first of all in the new constitution. It's a contract. I can take another example. If you employ somebody today and say your salary will be 30,000 kwacha, and then tomorrow you employ another person and you change the rules to say whoever is coming will be getting 60,000 kwacha. This other person cannot claim to say, even me, my salary has changed. No, your contract. The contract of President Edgar Lungu is in the old constitution. Why are you looking in the new constitution? Contract Yawa Lungu in the first term is in the old constitution. Read the old constitution. What does it say? That is what applies to President Edgar Lungu. The one that you are discussing, the new constitution, it doesn't apply to him. It applies to him in his second term. Is not eligible. Is not eligible. Didn't I know this? I knew it. And I was thinking, these guys are good guys. President Edgar Lungu is a good guy. But he's not a good guy. He's not. He's not. He's not. He's not. If he was a good guy, he wouldn't treat me like this. And this, you have brought on yourselves. Don't blame me. You have brought it on yourselves. You have brought it on yourselves. John Sangwa, I encourage you to go to court so that at the end of the day, to come on. And I can only encourage the judiciary to be fair, to read the old constitution. What does it say? What does it say? Does it talk about 3 years? The contract that President Edgar Lungu signed in the first term, does it talk about 3 years? It doesn't. The moment you enter State House, finish. And this man, what's his name? Elias Chipimo. He clearly explained that. Go back to Elias Chipimo. Reproduce what Elias Chipimo said. You will see that it is agreeing with what I'm saying here. It is agreeing. President Edgar Lungu is not eligible. And this is why it is causing this frustration and this insecurity. This all insecurity is because President Edgar Lungu is not eligible. But PF, you don't have a candidate. It's high time you sit down and start looking around amongst yourselves who can take over from President Edgar Lungu.